Thanks for that introduction, Bully. I'm pretty surprised that I'm actually standing here today considering the amount of time that I procrastinated on putting this talk together. And I think a few of us can relate to that considering Jono's comments on the group last night. So procrastination can loosely be defined as the act of delaying or postponing a task or set of tasks. But for each of us, procrastination can mean something different. Avoiding making decisions is procrastinating, sleeping in for an extra couple of hours when you know that you should be out of bed already is procrastinating, and finding every excuse not to start your work is procrastinating. During my research, I conducted a survey on students and found that 50% of them claimed to procrastinate every single day. The reasons that they gave for procrastinating included laziness, boredom, the enormity of the task at hand, being distracted by their phones, the fear that if they put in 100%, it just still wouldn't be good enough, and some preferring to actually work under pressure. But the one reason that I want you to keep in mind is stress. I couldn't quite wrap my head around the fact that I procrastinate so often, especially because I consider myself to be an extremely hard worker, and I would never ever call myself lazy. I often find that I'm juggling many tasks at once and I have a lot on my plate, but it's all out of choice. I choose to keep myself very busy, yet I still procrastinate. It wasn't until I came across a completely different perspective that opened my eyes to the root cause of my procrastination. And this is what I'm here to share with you all today. As from my research, I could see that there are many individuals, including some sitting here, who share similar characteristic traits as me, yet still can't seem to stop themselves from procrastinating. It all comes down to one word: stress. Yes, I mentioned it earlier. Stress is a root cause of procrastination. So in other words, your stress triggers you to procrastinate. So in order to actually tackle procrastination, you have to address the underlying issue, which is stress. The results from my survey showed that the two main things that students stress about is their future and work or studies. I can relate to both of these. For example, recently I went through a months-long application process with M&C Saatchi Abel, and the final stage of the process was to prepare for a panel interview. But at the same time, I was supposed to be researching and preparing for my Mac Live and doing all these other school tasks. But how could I possibly think about all the schoolwork when I had this stress of this interview at the back of my mind constantly, and this was stopping me from even pursuing my work that I knew had to be done? So I avoided doing my work at all costs. My response to all my stress was therefore to procrastinate. I would go for a run, I would play Candy Crush, I would spend hours on Instagram, I would binge watch series, I would gather my roommates to go for an ice cream at the creamery. I would do everything except my work. Why? Because procrastinating relieved me of my stress. But of course only for a certain period of time, because then I'd realize that shit, I have not even started any of this work, what am I going to do? And this again would just add to my stress levels. So the bottom line is, procrastination is a form of stress relief. Over 90% of the respondents in my survey said that they had no technique or mechanism to help prevent themselves from procrastinating. So enter Mel Robbins. Mel is a serial entrepreneur and one of the most popular motivational speakers around the world. She's widely known for her TEDx talk, How to Stop Screwing Yourself Over, which has over 15 million views on YouTube alone. So I definitely suggest you go check it out. But it's her 5-second rule that I want to share with you today. And no, I'm not talking about the one where you drop a piece of food on the floor and decide that it's fine to eat because you picked it up in less than 5 seconds. But rather one that will hopefully become your mechanism to stopping yourself, or at least trying to stop yourself from procrastinating. As procrastinators, we can be extremely hard on ourselves. So first and foremost, as silly as it may sound, you actually have to forgive yourself. When you feel you're stressed out and you can feel yourself starting to procrastinate, you need to have a little talk with yourself. Not out loud, unless you prefer to, but internally say, listen, I know I should have done this work ages ago, but I forgive myself, and I'm just going to do the best that I can right now. You see, you have to address the underlying issue. So that's a self-awareness of realizing, oh my goodness, here's my stress again about figuring out what the hell I'm going to do with my future next year, which is preventing me from doing all the things that are actually going to influence the outcome of my career. So by acknowledging that your stress is triggering you to respond by procrastinating, you're one step closer to actually stopping yourself from procrastinating. Once you've forgiven yourself, the second step is to use Mel Robbins' 5-second rule, which is a form of metacognition, meaning it's a way to trick your brain. It's simple, but it's definitely not easy. The 5-second rule states that if you have an instinct to act on a goal, you must physically move within 5 seconds, or else your brain will kill it. A gap exists between the moment you have an instinct or urge to act and your brain killing it. It's a 5-second gap, and it exists for each and every one of us. Taking action in that 5-second gap is how you push yourself to do the hard stuff, the stuff that you don't feel like doing, that you're avoiding, or that you're scared of doing. The 5-second rule lets you beat your brain at its own game and is a way to distract it from sabotaging you. Many of us live our lives in autopilot mode. Research has showed that actually 40% of our day is spent in autopilot. When you're in autopilot, you're solely functioning out of habit. Our prefrontal cortex is a part of the brain that is responsible for decision-making, planning, and working towards goals. The rule requires you to count down from 5, as this activates your prefrontal cortex, as opposed to counting from 1 upwards, which our brain recognizes as habit, and therefore our prefrontal cortex won't actually be activated. The countdown pushes you out of autopilot. As you count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're taking a deliberate action. And when you act, you're exercising control and you're activating your prefrontal cortex. So now, how to use the rule to stop yourself from procrastinating. You've acknowledged and accepted the fact that you're completely stressed out, but you feel the sudden urge or instinct that you need to start working. This urge is crucial. It is your 5-second gap. And if you do not act on that urge within 5 seconds, that's it, you're not going to start working. So immediately, you need to start counting backwards to yourself. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The counting will focus you on the task at hand and distract you from all the thoughts, worries, and excuses in your mind. Whilst you're counting backwards, you actually have to physically move toward your instinct or urge. So that is walking towards your laptop or toward whatever the task is that you need to be working on. As soon as you reach 1, push yourself to start. This is the final step. Work on your task for just 5 minutes. That is all it takes. Sit down at your desk or your laptop and just work on your task for 5 minutes. The amazing thing is that based on research, it's proven that 80% of you will keep going. The trick is starting. The principle of momentum proves that the initial amount of energy required to start a reaction, i.e. the activation energy, is much higher than the energy needed to keep it going. It's the same in life. The activation energy required to get you started is seriously hard to come by, but when you use the 5-second rule, you can push past your feelings of resistance, start, and then just keep going from there, i.e. preventing yourself from procrastinating. You see, the whole point is to break the connection between the trigger, which is stress, and the response, which is procrastination, and to acknowledge that whenever you feel stressed out, it's completely normal, and you do have a choice. Recognizing that, hey, here's my gap. In 5 seconds, the habit of procrastinating and beating myself up will take control. Or I can close that gap. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I can make a different choice. I can choose to start. I'm just going to be okay with where I'm at, and I'm just going to start. Thank you.